Hello, and welcome back to the tavern. This is Gatekeepers. From Gypsy's Evil Eye to the Curse of the Werewolf, or the Cursed Lands of Ravenloft, Shadar Logoth, and Moria, to the dreaded Stormbringer, and Mournblade, or even the One Ring, curses have always played a huge part of fantasy and science fiction literature. Tonight, we discuss curses and some of the ways we have used them at our tables. If you have not already done so, please consider hitting the subscribe button to this channel and the channels linked in the video description below. If you enjoyed tonight's content, please make sure to hit that like button, as it makes us aware that we are doing things that you are enjoying. If you don't like tonight's content, feel free to hit the dislike button. That is just as well. It lets us know if we've done poorly. Without further ado, let's get into the topic. Hello, my name is Jade, and this is my Tabletop Tavern. Tonight, I'm not going to be the moderator. Tonight, I'm bringing on Shadow. Welcome, sir.
Howdy, folks.
Shadow is going to be our moderator this evening, and I'm going to make him nice and big for you all. There we go. Also joining us this evening is Mar Huckman. Welcome.
Good evening.
And special guest and returning guest, the Crafting Gamer. Welcome.
Evening, all.
So, Shadow, how you feeling about tonight?
Pretty good. I actually wanted to give credit where credit is due. I'm currently reviewing the Ravenloft Forbidden Lore box set, and this particular book from the 5 that are included in it has a really good chunk on curses, and it inspired me to write up everything you're going to hear tonight about the subject, because for too long it seemed like just more game mechanic-y, and I'm really not a big fan of it. So tonight we're going to discuss curses in all their many forms and how we can include them in our tabletop role-playing games without turning them into just some sort of watered-down game mechanic. Hopefully tonight we can offer up some advice to make curses a thing to be feared and a thing of legend that will echo throughout your campaigns for years to come. So with that, I'd like to jump right into the first question. Hold on a second. It's a rough gig as a GM to translate curses into playable mechanic that flows with the game. So many variations to work with, from a reverse blessing or a spell, a cursed object, to more classical, takes, such as the righteous fury of an old man wrong, such as the opera Rigoletto. The power behind superstition or the belief played integral part in that scenario. Yeah, that's kind of the idea here. I'm 100% certain that the people that wrote Ravenloft back in the 90s, were a lot more well versed in the whole gothic and dark and mysterious genre that they pumped out dang near 100 books on the subject, whereas I'm just reading it for the first time. So hopefully we'll be able to all learn a little something tonight, because I'm no expert, but I do enjoy a bit of the dark, the gothic, the cursed elements of any RPG, whether it be science fiction or fantasy, Western. They can all use a little touch of this every now and then. And with Halloween right behind us, this is going to be our last real chance to go into stuff like this before we get into cheerier and brighter topics with the holidays coming. So with that, I'm going to hit you guys with the first question. Have you ever used or created a curse that truly brought a sense of fear or dread to your players for any lasting amount of time? I'm going to start with you, Jade. It's your show, and then I'll mix up the order as we go along.
Okay. As for me, I have done some interesting curses. One of my favorites was actually done to me as a player. This is about 25 years ago. One of my buddies, a good friend of mine, who got me into gaming, put a curse on a character I was playing. He'd actually been wounded by a god slaying weapon. And instead of killing me outright, as it should have as a mortal, it left a wound that could not be healed and blinded me in one eye. So my character, had to figure out how to adapt to this life without the use of his left eye, as well as a wound that would continuously bleed. He would have to wake up and chug a health potion every single day just to not bleed out. It got expensive, and it was quite a point of contention when it first happened. But I realized for me as a player, my game master was trying to teach me something valuable, that I was more than just a bag of hit points. I was more than just this character who could brutalize foes. Because I was playing a monk, but I wasn't playing a monk with the idea of one of the wise, a wise person who didn't want to fight. It quickly changed my course and my how I played the game, almost immediately after it happened. So yeah, that was the first time I was actually given a curse as a player, and it changed the way I viewed the game.
Awesome. I'll have a response to this at the end, but I'm going to go over to Mar to keep this flowing.
Well, this is something that I personally haven't actually tinkered with that much, oddly enough, from a GM side. But I've done I guess you could say I've been on the receiving end of several interesting curses while playing games. And one of those was a thing in a Hyperborea game where there is this thing where it's basically a cursed altar, but it was a quest important cursed altar where the curse would basically just give you a crippling stat debuff, not a minor stat debuff, like a seriously crippling stat debuff. And you had to, find a cleric who could uncurse you to fix it, which what this really did is it made it so that the party had to be very careful about how they approached bypassing this particular obstacle, because if you had to fight while you have one or more party members cursed like that, you're kind of screwed. And, but yeah, it's like from that perspective, it's an obstacle to be avoided, but an obstacle that you can't just walk around.
Agreed. How about you, TCG?
uh, very simple. Rune weapons.
Mm-hmm.
I there was a rune from a story. I can't remember what it's called. From Palladium, that you'll find this in the kind of a reoccurring theme on the personality part of it. If anybody picked it up, they instantly turned giant sized, became bald, and became the rune in the weapon. What became their personality, and it was a violent SOB. All it wanted was bloodshed. This is the only time I could say for a fact I let a player basically commit suicide because he picked up the weapon. And it says in the game, character dead. Make a new character if one of the character party members picks this up.
Well, that's kind of I don't know how I feel about that. I don't like just laying a trap uh, with such heavy bait that the players are almost invariably going to see the thing and go, I want it, and now I'm dead. Um,
There, it was one among many, many runes, and it was kind of set all by itself. Like almost like they describe it as being separate from everything else for a good purpose. Like they don't want it with the rest of the treasure.
I can deal with that. Not so much as a big caution sign and some yellow and black police tape, but something that should alert the PCs that, hey, maybe, maybe this isn't for you. Maybe you might want to think before
Yeah.
you act.
Oh, yeah. I guess like something like you walk into an armory with weapon racks with like 20 different weapons displayed neatly mounted on the walls, and then there's this one weapon that's locked inside a wooden crate.
Right. I would definitely, allude to the old, skull and crossbones or something to that effect, to give them the idea that, hey, maybe, maybe this is best left here. But, you know, players being what they are, they're more than likely they're still going to go for it. Now, for me, I had a player who's uh, playing a dwarven character who uh, spent most of his time, instead of um, you know, trying to go on the next adventure. Spent most of his time trying to craft uh, weapons and armor that were, just vile and nasty, and you know, all of the traditional sort of anti-Geneva Convention things, the reverse sawback bayonet kind of style stuff, the things that are just completely unnecessary and very undwarven like, to be sure. And the character was cursed with one of the old Dungeons and Dragons Dungeon Master Guide cursed effects from the Artifacts and Relics table of, pick your uh, ability, and place it into the more or less generic artifacts, which was actually a really neat system. If you guys haven't seen it from the old Dungeon Master's Guide, artifacts had a bunch of, slots where the DM could place in a power, a curse, a benefit, a side effect, things like that. And this one was where the player character could no longer touch or be touched by metal. And that was enough to spur the character on to go find a cure for said curse, which we'll touch on in just a moment. But well, let's just do that. Number two, I'm going to start with you crafting and go back up in reverse order. How do you normally use curses, or use a curse or curses in your campaign? How do you normally go about it?
Well, usually, well, admittedly, it's usually the rune weapons.
Mhm.
I I found that players, even players new to the game, tend to be, at least for me, overly cautious in that aspect. And unless you dangle a golden carrot in front of them, a simple carrot's just gonna go, yeah, yeah, that's gonna kill me, isn't it? You dangle a golden carrot, well, you can't go wrong with that. That's a obviously the GM's being a nice guy. So I tend to use rune weapons because the players, even though they should know better, always go, hey, look, a rune weapon.
Okay. So you don't do the cursed NPCs, the cursed player characters, lands, that sort of thing.
I have had one cursed NPC and one cursed land, but they were part of my one shot, so they didn't last very long. So I have a little bit of experience, but not that much for that.
Well, hopefully tonight we will get you to rethink that strategy, and use these in a little bit or much more varied ways to not, because I can tell you from experience, if 1 in 10 or even 1 in 20 items starts turning up cursed, the players are gonna be a lot more careful and a lot less trusting. They'll start doing things like scooping up the treasure with gloves and shovels, and never touching anything until they let some other NPC do the scrying and the detecting of magic and things like that, which will just eventually put a why bother on your whole artifact, relic, cursed magic item plans. Trust me, I've seen it happen. Not at my games, but in others, because I was in them. It's like, okay, well, we know we can't trust anything we find until we have it, scanned and checked out by a professional. So, here's one for the DM. So, how about you, Mar? How do you normally use curses in your campaign?
Well, the games I've played in, curses usually ended up being something you're trying to avoid. Like I mentioned, the whole thing with the cursed altar, and the some similar things like that. Like, it was like, yeah, there's a few things in Hyperborea where it's a spell that applies a curse, and it's basically just a debuff in combat. And it's like, it's not that interesting. However, it is something that's usually powerful enough to be meaningful. So, but those are the low tier boring stuff. And some of the Hyperborea curse items are just bad shit. Like, I'm not sure what the person who made this was thinking, but wow. Like an entire cursed room where the walls are glass and will suck you into them. Like the whole like magic mirror thing. It's like, oh, now I'm on the other side of the mirror, looking into the room from the outside. And you're like, wait, so how do I get back into the room? I don't want to be stuck in the mirror. Yeah, that one got stupid.
Interesting. Jade, how about you? Do you have a
Uh,
regular way of using
the curse
curses, or do you like to mix it up?
the curse I use most often, and my players do dread this one, when an elderly, a patron or a matriarch of a certain oracle line says to the players, "May you live in interesting times."
Hmm,
They know things are about to go sideways in the most
gosh,
epic way possible.
I mean,
do
that's a
you do you
curse
know
in
Um,
real life.
do you know good priest? Because I'm pretty sure someone hit me with that one. Low
um,
about 2020, I think. Yeah.
and the other one is that I use often is may the gods take notice. Um, because at that point, because I do use those pretty often. My players know that when that line is said, there's a change that happens in the game. Things become harder. They start going up against powers of divinity, and they know that something has been set against them, has been arrayed against them, and typically those things are nation or even world-ending threats that they themselves are going to have to figure out how to deal with. Um, and it accelerates the game to a point where sure the players are gaining lots of levels, lots of unique abilities and powers and weapons and equipment, but it's a needed gain to be able to contend with the various powers that have been arrayed against them. um, so my players do look for me to say something along those lines when the game is about to change.
I just typing in a response to Six Nations. Interesting. If you haven't read the Stone Thing by Michael Moorcock, I recommend you give it a look. See, it's only a couple of page short story, but it's kind of interesting. It's definitely got a nice punchline at the end. For me, I actually like the Cursed Land or the Cursed NPC because this way the players, because I've had a lot of experience with DMs and players uh, getting kind of butthurt um, when they pull a cursed magic item. It's like, oh, you put that in there just to mess with me, kind of attitude, and especially in the old days where you could just randomly roll that crap up if you were playing that way. It's like, whoa, 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 just rolling random here. There's always that seed of doubt with certain kinds of players, the kinds of players you probably shouldn't have at your table. But sometimes, they might be a relative or an old friend, and you kind of don't really have the choice. So if I use a cursed land, it's on the players to, you know, roll with it and maybe try to fix the problem. Be the big damn heroes, remove the curse, become the hero of the town, the country, the land, and get that parade and that Princess Leia medal ceremony. Do the things that a real hero would do, or the NPC that needs the player's help to help him remove or her remove the curse with a big fat paycheck at the end. That way, you get the elements of the curse. The players, know what kind of stuff I could throw at them. But I'm gonna right now. I'm just gonna pile it on this NPC or this countryside, and maybe you guys will step up, do the right thing, and you know win the accolades of millions, and have statues built in your honor. Which I mean, if you think about it, things like that can be more precious and more valuable than a dragon's hoard with the right frame of mind. Um, so yeah, that's what I do more often than not. Don't get me wrong. I love Stormbringer and I love Mournblade. Mournblade even more so because after a certain point in the story, nobody knows what happened to it. It just disappears, and I like to think that it's out there, doing its evilness, in the hands of a particular troll named of Milford. And you ever see a troll in full black plate armor, wielding a black rune encrusted blade? Just run, just run.
Um,
So
that reminds me actually of one thing that came up in a Hyperborea game was this dust that will negate your ability to use magic. Well, see, thing is, it has no effect on someone who doesn't already have the ability to use magic. So anyone who lacks the ability to use magic can handle it safely and use it as a weapon. Yeah, that's one
real
of the
quick,
weird ones.
real quick. Sorry we suck, but I'm going to take that as a compliment that we are giving you exactly what we intended, which is food for thought. Might I recommend a notepad by the bed, or index cards like I use,
Take
or
notes, yeah.
figure out the voice to text function, send yourself an email. Um, and as for Michael Moorcock, to be honest, he was one of the finest of the new age of sci-fi and fantasy writers back in the day, who really did not have a problem with screwing over each and every one of his own characters in ways most TMs would never even dream of, especially these days. So on to question number 3. Uh, I'm going to start with you, Mar, and then go up to Jade, and then down to crafting, and then we'll start the process over because I think we'll hit everybody once with getting to go first. Mar, this might not apply because of the things you've said before, but think about it in retrospect to the future. Um, where do you draw your inspiration for the curses you bestow on your unfortunate players, NPC lands, and or items in your game?
I'm just going to like hypothetically like things I've seen
Absolutely.
curses in that I found to be interesting and maybe possibly something that I would be willing to use in a game. Because honestly, when I think about diverse variations on the concept of curses, I keep thinking of Diablo 2, which yes, it's a computer game, and all of the curses are things you
Mm.
do to enemies in battle or enemies do to you. And quite frankly, one of them was infamous for being able to one shot players sometimes because it was a curse that, when applied to a character, would cause the character to injure themselves anytime they used a melee attack.
Mhm.
Which, if an enemy casts that on you while you're in the middle of trying to stab another enemy to death, oops. Well. But that game had a whole bunch of things that were. There's that one. There's a bunch of things that are just stat debuffs, which were actually pretty nasty too. But yeah, those that's that like the spellcraft side of curses though. Like what I mentioned earlier about Hyperborea having a bunch of spells that are basically just their stat debuffs, and the concept is quite similar to the way Diablo 2 did curses. Although doesn't have quite as large a variety of them, but still, they're useful ones. However, I also think of really, really weird things from various books I've read because I have read some fiction books that had some very, very strange ideas of curses. some of those curses were things where you're like, okay, why did anyone ever think of making this a curse in the first place? Oh boy. I mean, also there's the old King Midas curse. That one's just so famous and weird that most people have heard of it, even if they would never actually do that to a player in a TTRPG. Oh well.
I mean,
I,
I have.
actually, I did once play in a TTRPG a character who was kind of sort of cursed in that she gained the ability to wield fire based magic, but at the same time was also kind of sort of permanently on fire, so that when she touches things, if it's something that can easily catch flames, it will. Like so, she like literally can't hold anything made out of paper, or she'll accidentally light it on fire just by touching it.
By the way, Jade, love that. Putting the question up on the screen for everybody so they can follow along. And it's actually in bigger print than I've got on my device here. So awesome. I don't mind getting my head chopped off by the timestamp. So,
Actually, they can't see this timestamp. Only we can.
okay. So just my vanity is being hurt. Okay. Not a problem. Um, TCG,
Yep.
where do you get your
Is it-
inspiration from?
all over the place. Like in the case of the land-based curse, I was inspired when watching one of Bruce's games. This is a recreate, not a recreation, a slight alteration is how I should put that, because the original one didn't come with a particular one that I would now employ. Is how I should put that. I got a bad back and I took some pain medication, so I'm a little frazzled at the moment. Uh, so in that case, it's inspired an old curse. Sorry, I should talk about the first curse. When it first came about, I was actually reading up on how dragons have hordes, and and that wasn't even Palladium, even though I use this in Palladium. It was the one time I had access to a monster manual from D&D. And this is a curse I want to talk about later, so I'm not going to spoil what it was. But so, and I haven't implemented, but I've thought of a few curses that I've seen, like, oh, that'd be a good one from TV or movies that I just can't think of right off the top of my head.
No, it's
But
okay. The point is really to give people give people out there ideas of where to look because you never know what they're going to find when they look.
oh yeah,
For example, in a comic book or in a movie, you know, each person is going to look at it differently and draw their own weird, macabre ideas when maybe looking for a curse. So I just want to get some ideas of maybe places people don't normally look because normally they're going to look in folklore and in game books and things like that. I'm hoping for some ideas other than like the more obvious.
oh yeah.
So how about you, Mar?
Mm. Wait, what was the question again?
Where do you draw inspiration for the curses you bestow upon your
Oh,
unfortunate players?
oh,
It's right there.
oh, you asked me that one already.
Oh, I did.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
You
sorry,
started
sorry.
with me this round. I was like,
Okay.
wait a second.
All right. Well, then I assume then it's my turn because I have uh, two sources I regularly frequent. That being the Bible, and trust me, poof, there are some nasty ideas for plagues and things like that that you could you know lay upon your campaign world. And the other one, believe it or not, the one that I like to go to every once in a while because I just don't have the time like I used to just sit and focus on music. Some I listen to a lot of heavy metal, old rock, but I listen to a lot of other things. But I'm going to give it up for heavy metal and darker, forms of music. There are some really negative images uh, that one can pick up from that. One of the ones that my players not only looked forward to the most, but the more discerning players actually feared it. Believe it or not, you guys are going to think, "Oh, that sounds like a great curse," and that was the curse of life eternal written on a door. And I'm not going to let you know where it came from because it's more or less irrelevant. But you would think, "Oh, getting to live forever. Who doesn't want that?" Well, the people who aren't heartless bastards, the characters who actually are alive in your games, they're not going to look at it like we would, being that we get to play our favorite character until we ourselves croak. But the character, if so cursed, would not look upon it the way the player would. It would look upon it like with a sense of foreboding and dread that everyone and everything they care about is going to pass before their eyes, to the point of what is the point. A discerning player would be like, wow, I don't even want to play this character anymore because what's the point? Sure, I get to do some cool stuff, but then the things that are really meaningful, things that matter, family and friends, they're going to pass away in the blink of an eye. Can you bring up Mac? Excuse me, not Mac. And Mac, I need to speak with you after the show. Yeah, the Six Nations. Yeah, seventh son of a seventh son, sins of the father type of stuff. Reminds me of some Campy Hammer and Amicus films that touched on bloodlines and whatnot. Absolutely, absolutely. These curses, don't need to just be like I said earlier. Game mechanicy things that are just going to irritate the players. They should have meaning. They should have an impact that everybody around them, might shun them for fear of the curse, rubbing off on them, or the curse of Midas. Stay the heck out away from me. I don't want to be turned to gold. Then you're just going to melt my ass down. Um, Jade, did you touch on this one?
I haven't had a chance to yet. No.
Then by all means, take it away, sir.
Okay. So, the question is, where do you draw inspiration for for the curses you bestow upon the unfortunate players, NPCs, or lands and items in your games? For me, I do play a lot of video games. I watch a lot of anime, but most of my curses are actually ancient, and by ancient I mean like Greek ancient. Um, a lot of your curses, especially may you live in interesting times, stuff like that dates way back. So I go to my Greek epics for the most part, because the Greeks made it personal. When a Greek god cursed someone, it was personal. And the person, whoever was the recipient of said curse, they had a hell of a journey ahead of them to try to relieve some of the curse, because they never truly ever got away with it or from it. So that's where I draw my biggest portion of inspiration from, is the Greek epics. There are other really great works out there in different forms of media for curses. There's some really great authors who have come up with some really interesting curses in their fantasy genres. Jim Butcher, I think, had one of the better ones for his character Dresden. I can't remember exactly how the curse goes, but it was die alone was the curse, and it happens in, I think, the fifth or sixth book. And the curse is just simply that, for the person to die alone, knowing that they are completely alone and helpless. And like, what worse fate can you have than that? I have not used that one yet on a player, although I have come very, very close.
I'm pretty sure our friend Max Liao uses that one on a regular basis, or is that the dumpster fire one? It
Ah,
also reminds me of, and you'll probably appreciate this, Mar. Uh, William T. Kirk's curse of no beach to walk on. The one thing that he wants in that moment of weakness, you big tough bastard, was to never know that simple pleasure.
Hmm.
Death by fire ants. Um,
that
okay,
would be pretty awful.
yeah, but I mean, someone's gonna have to go to a lot of trouble for that one, you know, or you're gonna have to
But the
just be
fact,
poking that
but the
anthill.
fact that they did like that there is in and of itself. The fact that they did go to the trouble for that.
Mhm. I suppose. I believe we are now on
Uh, uh,
question
uh, uh,
number 4.
actually, a curse that attracts fire ants to you anytime you're near them would be rather bad, honestly.
Yeah, but in the wrong location, the wrong part of the world where there are none.
I know.
That's a lot of work. That's a lot of work. And heck, getting the fire ants to that location, half of them could die along the way from starvation,
Oh,
temperature
Or,
change.
yeah. I mean, if you're in Alaska, the fire ants are just going to die of the cold before they even get to you.
Yeah, that's where I would head. I would definitely, or at least think about it.
so this is the fourth question for you, Shadow.
And I'm going to start with you, Jade, and go back down the line. Have you ever created a land or location that was truly cursed, and what was the origin of said curse?
Yeah. So, we touched on this last week a little bit with environments. Having environments be central to, especially like a horror setting or horror campaign.
Absolutely.
Um, the the environment, if it is an environment that has seen such atrocities that large swaths of land were reshaped or carved, and massive amounts of life were lost, that land is very likely cursed. It's either cursed or unhallowed in some capacity, and especially for my major battlefields. I run a world that is exceptionally old. So some of some of the events that have happened have been lost to time, but the effects have not been lost to time. They've been left to fester or grow, and despite some of the most longest lived races trying to figure out how to alleviate the curse, even to them they're like childhood stories that they tell their young to keep them away from that area. Um so for my cursed lands, it's generally large amounts of death, and not just simple death, not just battlefields, but horrific death. That those are my cursed lands, where the ghosts of those ancient battles walk the battlefield still, trying to win for their side. Where beings of great power decided to sacrifice a large amount of life in efforts to become gods themselves through dark ritual. Those are my cursed lands. Um, the land itself fights against those who would seek to undo it at times, because the spirits are restless, and the spirits don't want to just simply move on. They want their revenge. They want to see the beings who profited off their death, off their their life force. They want to see those beings brought to an end, even if that being has long since gone, and the spirits don't know that the being is gone, so they yet linger and languish for that person or whoever did it to them to be destroyed. So those are my cursed lands.
Very similar to mine, but we'll get to that at the end. Mar, how about you? Or
One idea that I personally like in the context of making a region like truly difficult for players to deal with is the idea that the after effects of a war are determined by the weapons used to fight the war. I mean, if you shoot up a building with a machine gun, you have bullet holes in the walls as an after effect of that. But what happens when you use apocalyptic magic to fight a war? What effect does that have on the land you cast the magic on? That's an idea that I haven't actually personally written a module using it. Something I've toyed with as an idea a lot, and it's something I would actually like to do because I've seen stuff along those lines used in a lot of TTRPGs though, because like, oh, this is a building that used to be a nice a place, but it got destroyed in this war, and now it's like this because of what happened in the war, and so on and so forth. Because it gives a history to the place you're fighting in, and not just oh, by the way, if you step in this ooze, it'll kill you. Because like the idea with that one is like someone killed the population of an area by creating this rain of ooze, where the ooze would just kill people that it touched, and now the ground is covered with the stuff still.
Hmm. Interesting. How about you, TCG?
Could you repeat the question for clarification?
It's on screen.
Oh, it is.
Yep.
Have you ever created a land or location that was truly cursed, and what was the origin of said curse?
Okay. Yes, I have, but this goes back to the one that watching Bruce kind of inspired to expand on. A curse of what I called Dragon's Greed, or Dragon's Hoard, excuse me. It was a cave that if the players found, they could take no more than they could physically carry out of the cave. If they did, in the case of that, if the cave instantly killed them.
Hmm.
Bruce kind of inspired on make it so they send someone with that you send someone with him as GM, and he tries to get greedy and ends up getting turned into a dragon, which the players have to kill. But there's a part of where this is a secondary curse where this was a group of players that I don't think I think they play Palladium today, but they will never play with me again. Not all of them decided to never take anything out of the Horde, which is actually the worst idea. Because when you left, the Horde shrank down and just jumped into your hand, like the entire cave. And when it does that, you will now permanently have a Dragon's Horde that you can never take anything more than 10% out of at when it has out of it, when you start taking some out of it. And on top of that, you have an insatiable desire to make the Horde bigger.
Okay,
I'm
that's
actually
pretty gonzo. I love it.
I'm actually reminded of Smog in that aspect, where the gold itself is cursed because the dragon nested within it and made it its hoard. And it affects Thoradin in very negative ways. Not just because it's Thoradin's home, but because it's I believe it was described in there. It's dragon fever or some such, and it affects those who are wanting it or desiring it the most.
Yeah, Tolkien was kind of vague on that one, but something or other about the fact that Smaug literally slept on this pile of gold caused some aspect of Smaug's malice to be imbued into the
Mm-hmm.
gold or something.
Yeah. Ooh, Curse of the Black Pearl's good.
As for me, you're not going to believe this, but um, I had uh, I had a location on my main fantasy world map that's still going, and there was one location where the legends told long, long ago of how two of the gods literally stood there and fought one another for a very long time because they're gods. Their minions, depending on who you hear the tale from, joined in the battle and ravaged the countryside for miles and miles as far as the eye could see. And I could never, ever, ever entice my players to go investigate that one spot of land. They traveled all around the globe in scores of different adventuring parties, scores of different players. At last count, probably close to 100 different players, and I could never, ever entice them to just cross that line. Sort of, you know, boundary. Here's okay. Here's not so good. Here's where the gods fought, and not one of them ever was brave enough to journey into that particular cursed land. One of these days, I'll find a party brave enough, because to be honest, I don't even know what's there. It was like, what's the point? I can't get anybody to go there. I'll draw it up some other time. Hey, you guys want to go? Check out the. No, nope, nope, nope. Okay, okay. Sorry, just asking for a friend. Um, so I believe everybody got to cover this one. We'll head into question number 5. Do you ever introduce cursed NPCs or creatures in your campaign to your players? And what effect or results were you trying to achieve? And was it successful? And how did it play out? TCG, I'm going to start with you and go back up the line.
Yes, I have. It was only once, like I said before, and this was a kind of a I didn't know Call of Cthulhu at the time, but a kind of a Call of Cthulhu character, someone who found out things he wasn't supposed to and was driven mad by the knowledge. And he traveled with the players for a while. They didn't realize that's what his thing was until one day they came across things they couldn't hurt. They couldn't figure out why until they start getting overwhelmed, and he comes out with these special weapons he basically made out of scrap junk. Like, once again, not knowing a Warhammer, he kind of has this orky ability where he makes it and it works. And he was able to banish the dark things that was attacking
Mhm.
the party, and they had to run around with his little gadgets to deal with them. But he was, because of what he did, because of how far he dealt, he jumped in. He was cursed with pure madness, just not aggressive madness.
Okay, trying to stack hot dogs, that sort of thing,
Uh-huh.
end to end. Gotcha.
In fact, I think the party kind of kept him, like, I think somebody after, because this is one of my test groups again. I think somebody somebody asked me for the character sheet I had for him, and I think he's running around with that party still. He might be anyway. I don't know.
Okay, you guys in chat, you guys are killing me. So how about you, Mar? You ever like to introduce the poor NPC or the misunderstood creature that's really just some sort of curse?
Well, having a cursed NPC be the genesis for a quest is actually a really good idea. And one of the more memorable Hyperborea modules I played through had a cursed NPC as someone you needed to help as part of the module. And, I don't remember the exact specifics of it, but because that one took a while. But, it's like, it's a great way to get your attention and like give you this thing. It's like, hey, here's a problem to fix. And that also that thing that I mentioned earlier, which again wasn't a game I was in, but one that I saw on YouTube. One of the ideas that the GM for that one had was in what was again a game master fiat thing for story reasons. Uh, the bad guy that they were having a campaign fighting just shows up at the beginning of one of the things, curses one of them, and then runs off. Well, the effect of that curse was, again, since this was a Game Master Fiat thing for story reasons, he'd prepared this ahead of time. He literally handed the player a new revised character sheet because of the fact that the effect of the curse was to change the female tiefling's character class from warlock to barbarian.
Hmm.
And then they have to go do a quest to fix that.
Alrighty then, Jade. How about you? I know you. I know you
So
guys have done all of these at least once.
yeah, so for me, as far as introducing cursed NPCs or creatures in my campaign, yeah, like my werewolves, generally speaking, my werewolves are cursed creatures, and I'm talking about like the classical werewolf, the loup-garou, cursed by either fae, a witch, or some angry god. Um, and normally I introduce the character when they're not, or I will introduce them in their cursed form first as a terror to behold. But then during the day cycle, when the party is able to go and speak to people about what's going on in the quaint little village where the whole herds of sheep are destroyed in a single night, that's when I introduce the character as sometimes a very manic person who's nervous all the time, and doesn't seek out other people. Um, cursed individuals, at least in my games, they will seek solitude more times than not, so that they themselves are not a danger, don't pose a danger to others as often as they can. I do have some cursed creatures who have lived long enough that they're like, nope, screw it, I'm just going to curse everyone I'm near. I do have those maniacs, and generally the maniacs are what the players go murder hobo on. It's the characters that are trying their damnedest to not inflict their curse upon others that my party has a hard time dealing with. Do you just kill the character outright because they're cursed? Do you attempt to figure out if there's a way to remove the curse? Um, and how do you go about these things? Those are the moral quandaries that my players have to figure out. Is there a way for them to lift the curse? I don't know. Have you looked for one yet? Generally, yeah, I will uh, have a method, kind of in the back of my head of how it's done. But it's up to my players to even attempt to go down that path to start with. Um, and to answer Mac Thompson here, so yes, lycanthropy, the first lycanthrope in my world, my game world, is cursed. They are a cursed being. They messed with things they really, really should not have. They made a mistake, and for their hubris, they were made into the first werewolf. Um, Everybody refers to it as a bloodborne illness, or the disease of lycanthropy. But in my game world, it's the true loup-garou is a curse, not a disease. Diseases can be treated; curses have to be lifted. Um,
Oh yeah, that
and the
reminds.
first
Oh,
and the first werewolf is something, again, they were a mortal who messed with beings and powers they had no true understanding of dealing with. And to lift their curse, it's it is in theory possible, but it's only possible if they get the original curse layer to lift it.
Mhm.
Whereas vampirism is to me, in my game world, vampirism is a bloodline thing. It is a is a magical effect that somebody was trying to figure out how to live forever. And again, they cursed their entire bloodline to perpetuate it. Beings messing with powers they don't understand. This is a theme for me, especially in my game world, where the hubris of the first people to acquire these curses, they shouldn't have messed with it. They decided, screw it, I want to live forever. I want to figure out how, and I don't care who has to pay the price. So that generally that's how most of my major beings or curse bloodlines came into effect the very first time, and that was like prehistory. So we're talking like Bronze Age or even before that. The Stone Age beings are like, I you know I watch everybody else around me die. I don't want to die. Gods, how do I live forever? Fae, how do I live forever? And then treating with the Fae is never an easy thing. It should never be attempted lightly. So yeah, typically when I again getting back to the question, when I introduce characters that are or creatures that are cursed, most of the time they are not just the misunderstood monster. They're doing their damnedest to keep their curse under wraps. They're not trying to let it rule them. They just unfortunately don't have full control over it, and that's what the PCs have to figure out. Of what do we do with this person? Do we end them simply and move on, or do we try to help them out?
Now, what you were saying about werewolves reminded me of the way vampires work in Marvel Comics.
Oh.
In an unknown age, so old that no one remembers how long ago it was, eldritch beings created this cursed book called the Darkhold. The Darkhold is a book of such malevolent power that an ordinary person reading it will actually get possessed by the book and start to unleash things from the book that mortals should not mess with. And one of those things that happened was turning someone into a vampire. And that's the source of vampirism in Marvel Comics.
And was it Six Nations brought up something. I have actually done this to one of my players. As a matter of fact, he's not here tonight, but Connell has played a character in one of my games who was cursed, and it wasn't that he was cursed. He was cursed for perpetuating it, but his character's father was the first person to develop gunpowder weapons. And then, he found the plans and made them better, made them more advanced, made them more reliable, more repeatable, and just made them in general more deadly. So that was his character. And his character was cursed by elves and fae that for him to live where his loved ones should die, that every person he ever loved will die, and he will continue to live. It was basically a bastardized form of immortality, but it was very much the die alone curse. And his character, and there was no simple way out of it. He couldn't just commit suicide. He got 50 more years tacked onto his life, basically, every time he attempted suicide, because he wanted out of it. So the curse did actually have a time limit. He was given, I think it was like 500 some odd years, where everyone who ever knew him from his normal life would be long dead, including some elves that he knew. And that was the character's, his life. So when we actually played the game, he kept it under wraps. He didn't want to tell anybody. He didn't want anybody to know that, yeah, he was the son of the man who made the first gunpowder weapons, and the reason why so many wars and so many atrocities were committed. And he did his absolute damnedest to as a player to mitigate the harm of firearm weapons. He went out of his way to purposely make them so that after so many rounds were fired, they had to be replaced. He was doing everything he could to stop the perpetuation of continuing advancements. But unfortunately, once the secret's out of the box, you can't put it back in. The whole Pandora's box aspect. So, his character tried, tirelessly to put everything back into Pandora's box, but never could.
Hmm. I have some thoughts, but I'm going to save those for later, just because I want to get to uh, the next question. But before that, I like to mix the two. I like to have the monster and the NPC, sort of a Jekyll and Hyde, also the werewolf. You meet the gorgeous innkeeper's daughter and blah blah blah. Next thing you're exchanging phone numbers and that sort of thing, and then you find out that there's a monster running loose in town or ransacking the village or something like that, and it couldn't be her. Nah, 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 I couldn't. Something. I like to mix that whole tragedy, in with it, uh, which we will get to as well later. But giving the players more than just the usual kick down the door, kill the monster, take the treasure, rinse and repeat. I want a story. I'm not going to write the story, but I'm going to throw enough things out there that if they go in this direction or that direction, they're going to get a good story. And the Jersey Devil, like I said, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, that whole sort of idea that the monster isn't just a, a blank set of stats, or I should say a static set of numbers with no story, no backstory, no future, just a now, kill it, get it over with, get the XP. I want them to have to track it down and do the research and maybe do the literal tracking it in the middle of the night, trying to follow its footsteps or its blood spattered footprints in the town after it's taken the lives of one or more innocent victims until when they finally get there, they find out it's the one person in the whole wide world they wish it wasn't. You're still there, right, Jade?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
And I've already queued the next question for you.
I appreciate that. I'm gonna have Mar go first with this one, and then down and back up to the top. Mar, how do you go about making a cursed item or relic that is more than just negative game mechanics and make it something truly memorable?
Well, okay. I've seen a long list of things that are fit into the idea that I like with this. Like we talked about earlier, it's like there's the old things like, oh, this is a cursed sword. You have to break the curse, or you can't de-equip it, and it's a terrible sword, and you don't want to use it. Lame, boring. But something that's a lot more interesting is a cursed item that, well, let's go with the dark costume thing from Spider-Man. It's like it eventually becomes Venom, but at first it's just simply referred to as a black symbiotic costume, which, okay, it has a lot of benefits, quite frankly. However, it's got a mind of its own, and it doesn't really want to be a hero. Let's put it that way. That sort of thing, is like, yes, the item has some sort of horrible downside to it, but it also has a reason why you would want to use it anyways.
It has what?
The idea here is to give the item both a horrible downside and also a reason to use it despite the horrible downside.
Ah, you stole my answer. Okay. I was afraid someone was going to get one of them, but
I mean,
That's
it's
okay.
probably an obvious answer, to be honest, but still, it
Screw
was the
you.
first one I thought of.
Can you give us an example of something really cool and really terrible at the same time?
I mean, like from games I played, uh, in one of the Hyperborea games I was in, there was a helmet that would do damage to you equal to a quarter of your hit points anytime you took the helmet off. And while wearing it, it made your character scary looking. So you didn't necessarily want to wear it around all of the time. However, it was actually a very powerful helmet.
Oh, you switched everybody around. You sneaky, sneaky devil.
I put them in the order that you said you wanted to go in.
Okay.
You're welcome.
Crafting, how about you? How about you?
Uh, yes, I've played with Palladium has an excellent rune making system for lesser runes, but if you get a little creative, you can make greater runes with it, and greater runes almost always come with a curse. So one of the curses I made, and mind you, this was still for a younger group, so everyone thought it was fucking hilarious. Sorry, freaking hilarious. Uh, is
You get one.
a rune sword that every time the player swung in a direction, he literally just without moving his feet, bounced off the ground like someone bounced a ball off the ground, and he just go flying off in that direction. I know that doesn't sound like much of a curse, but if he did it too hard and while swinging somebody, he'd eject himself from battle automatically. Everyone got a
Wow.
huge kick out of that. So
Okay.
it wasn't a curse, but it was definitely I'd say my most memorable curse because the stories of that game is still going on. If I know it's still going around town because uh, I've heard a couple people talk about the jumping sword recently.
All right. I'd love to see stats on that.
I don't have easy access to them, but I think I know where to look, so I could probably see about digging it out here soon.
Yeah, I'd love to see that in our Discord. If you're not already a member of our Discord, the link is in the video description. If you want to ask questions to us or pose questions in the general discussion, or open questions, join our Discord and get the feedback from some of the other game masters that are there.
Excellent segue
So,
there.
so, making cursed items or relics more than just game mechanics and truly memorable. In many ways, the players do this for me. Like I might have a pretty awesome magic item that might have a minor drawback or might have something tied to it, but the players will take the meanings or the intended uses of it so much further than I ever intended. um just because one of the guns has been corrupted, doesn't mean the person using it is gonna just stop using it. They're going to continue to use it because it's effective. It hits for a lot of damage. It does all these things, but what they're not realizing is they're giving up a little bit of their soul every time they use it. Are they going to continue to use it? Well, yeah, it hits for a lot of damage. Why wouldn't I use it? Um, and then I'll game wise, they'll be talking with NPCs, but the NPCs don't want to be around them. They can feel the aura of dread and evil around them. They can feel the person's soul is leaving them, subconsciously. So it makes the NPCs standoffish to them. And they start asking, why is this happening? And then someone in the party goes, well, dude, every time you fire that weapon, takes a little bit of your soul away. Like, we notice it. We have been noticing it. We just haven't said anything. Um, and the players will, ultimately make the decision, like, do I continue down this path and, be damned the consequences, or do I not? Um, so I mean, having truly memorable things is where the players themselves make the decision, or make moral decisions about their character's future. That's where the memories happen. It's not just that, oh yeah, I crit that thing so hard I blasted it into the next dimension. Like, yeah, sure, those conversations are awesome, and they happen a lot. Or you get the person who does such wacky things, like, oh yeah, I'm gonna swing from the chandelier, cut the guy's feather out of his cap, and backflip, and superhero land on this guy's face. Okay, yeah, that happens. But when a player has to make a very hard moral decision for their character, that truly is something that sinks in as a memory. And you have the memories that are made along the way, especially the funny memories, and people remember the really funny things. Like, was it, I had a player who got mad at one of the NPCs, and this was like the opening acts of the campaign, and he swung his hammer down and missed the table with a nat one. Nobody lets the player live it down, even 5 years later. But when a character who was shooting his soul away, literally shooting his soul away, decided, I'm going to make the choice to no longer use this weapon or redeem this weapon. They talk about it even now. They talk about that character, and they love that character. Even me, with the character I played, the guy who got a scar across his face, who couldn't see out of his left eye as a monk, who depended on both eyes for defense. Even me, I had to make some pretty hard choices with the character. Like, what direction do I go? I want this curse alleviated, but am I willing to pay the cost to remove this curse? Do I really want to travel down that road? And that road was apotheosis. I had to fully realize what it meant to ascend into the next, into becoming the next being. It wasn't just oh yeah, snap my fingers, let's ascend. No, it was a very long, hard road to figure out how to end the bleeding curse and become a guardian of Earth for that character. That was his ascension. Is he became the guardian of all land. Um, and it was a very long, hard road for him. But I think it was worth it, and I still love and remember that character. As a matter of fact, that character is the name on the channel. It's Jade.
Wow. For me, my absolute most favorite spell, psionic, or even superpower, and possibly, in my opinion, the most useful and powerful ability one could ever gain is the ability to teleport. And a lot of DMs really hate it because it makes short work of certain situations. But I'm a big fan, and I really don't have a problem with it. But once upon a time, I decided that I was going to drop a little magic item in a pile of treasure, and it was at this time it was a helmet, but you could easily go with the ring so that just about anybody could use it. When you teleport to someplace you want to go, somebody teleports to someplace they don't want to go. And that started a very long, interesting campaign arc of trying to figure out where everybody was disappearing to. And the only way to remove the curse was to either find these people or to yourself teleport someplace completely random that you knew you did not want to go, but were willing to take that step. In one case, I had the wearer of the device start to receive horrible nightmares of the horrible fates they left these unsuspecting NPCs in. They would, be cursed in their sleep by the person who knew darn well what happened, and it was all the player character's fault of you put me here, and I can't escape, and it's all your fault, and that sort of thing. I even gave them a little hint. The main aspect of the item had a gem in it, and if you looked at it just right, you might see that person, banging on the walls of the gem, to see, you know, oh my gosh, King so and so, he's trapped in the gem, or he's trapped somewhere and he can't get out, and it's my fault. I've got to do something about it. Yeah, I'm a dick like that on occasion. Normally, I'm a big fan of teleportation. I love it. The things you can do with it, the the good you can do, the time you can save, etc. But every once in a while, you got to pay the piper.
That is a very creative one, to be honest. It's like, because the most severe downside I've ever seen a teleportation ability used with in fiction previously was the idea of you can only teleport by swapping places with something the same size as yourself. The thing is, though, if you're teleporting to a location and you can't see your destination, you're going to swap places with something without knowing what it is.
Yeah, that would be pretty nasty. You want to get into the room, but there just happens to be a troll in the room, and now your friends are confronted with a big giant troll taking your place. Nice, nice.
That would be mean. Oh, that's so mean. I love it. I'm gonna steal that. Sorry, players. No,
Be
I'm
my
not.
guest. I I like the idea of balance. The curse doesn't have to be full on evil,
Mm-hmm.
and malicious and nasty. It could technically, it could be quite humorous with the intent of being funny. You know, uh,
To be honest, that teleportation one, I got the idea from a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle cartoon.
why am I not even a little bit surprised?
I know.
Well, I'm going to be in a Turtles game next year. Believe it or not, something I never thought I would say, let alone admit on camera. But I'm actually looking forward to it.
The 80s
Max was
were a
always
wonderful time.
Max was, always, and probably still is. I haven't been on a show in a while, talking about how much he loved, the whole anthropomorphic animal sort of, games, where you're playing a mutated animal. So, true to spirit, I have to pick the bat. Yes, the man bat, or the something. So,
Yeah,
whatever.
man, bat.
That'll be my character for that. So Bloodworth, you heard it here first. I'm gonna pick the bat. Not gonna pick the badger or the weasel, whatever that one is that has the insane dexterity, physical prowess, whatever. I'm just gonna go with the bat. Just want to fly around at night, checking things out. None of that vampire stuff. Just give me a couple of apples and I'll be happy. And we'll see where that goes.
Oh, a fruit bat. Those are interesting. In real life, fruit bats are actually the largest ones too.
Yeah, that's what I figured. I don't want to be like, like a 3 foot tall flying, humanoid bat. Give me some stature.
Oh, right,
Give me
like the Man Bat from Batman comics.
exactly. I mean, why go with like a something that's going to end up being kind of small and easily caged, and you know that sort of thing.
So I have updated the next slide for you, sir.
Thank you. This is
Mhm.
this is one of my favorites, because this is what it's really all about. I think from the oldest of folklore tales, the curse was meant to impart a lesson or a moral to the story. So, do you guys ever use a curse as a method to teach a valuable lesson or impart a moral to the ongoing story? I'm going to start with you, TCG. Then we'll go up,
Uh,
and Jade, you'll be last. Sorry.
yes, actually, I have.
Well, do tell. Don't keep us in the dark.
Sorry. Uh,
I'm
it
just messing
was
with you.
it was actually the dragon horde curse that I was talking about before. The lesson I was trying to impart the first hand is too much greed is bad, hence the reason why you could only take what you could carry safely out of the cave. But the second part of the curse is meant to teach you a little greed is good. Because if you don't get greedy, the cave turns around and becomes a permanently part of your collection, and then you have to hoard treasure from that point on. A little greed is good. I mean, you just got to know when to not be greedy, is all.
I would call it just ambition, and
Yeah, that's
a
probably a better way of putting it.
necessary evil. We do
Yeah.
live in a society where money is a thing, and without it, you end up on the streets. And
Uh-huh.
nobody wishes that on anybody who doesn't deserve it. I should hope, but absolutely, this is exactly the sort of thing I'm trying to impart. As opposed to the just the malicious, mindless, random cursed item. I always had a problem with that. What kind of rat bastard would make a magic item that's cursed and just leave it for some unsuspecting party member to happen upon it, thinking, "Hey, this is cool, just what I was looking for," and now all of a sudden, every time I swing it, it's bending and stabbing me in the back.
There are actually
Be
some
careful.
settings where certain curses only apply to the living, and those curses don't apply if it's an undead using it or a demon using it.
Right, because they were probably created by something like that.
You ask who would create something like that.
Yes.
I've got a friend who would create something like that because the one time someone wanted to play a ninja, they were hoping for an intelligent weapon. The GM obliged because the player would not, for the life of them, would not shut up about wanting an intelligent weapon. So the game master said, "Okay, yeah, sure, you have an intelligent weapon. It glows, but I'm a ninja. Yeah, I know. It glows, and it's intelligent, and it can speak out loud."
Oh, this line of discussion reminded me of a Warhammer 40K novel I read years ago, where the daemons of the warp would make cursed items whose sole purpose was they threw them out of the warp into the normal space realm where humans might find them and try to use them. And they're cursed items to pull whoever or guide whoever picks them up into the warp so that the demons
Um,
can have their way with them.
the intelligent glowing ninja or ninja toe that the ninja picked up was also afraid of the dark. So every time he sheathed it, it would yell out
Oh
in
dear
fear.
God.
Yeah, that would,
Oh,
like I said, I do know a game master who would give a weapon like that or something like that to a player.
what I
It
was
was
actually
hilarious.
referring to though was the what kind of rat bastard NPC dungeon masters.
Oh,
We
okay,
all fit into that,
okay.
but especially in Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, where most magic items I use kind of you know originate from the process to make a magic item. It's not impossible. It's not even all that difficult unless the GM is a tightwad and afraid of challenging even himself at the table by handing out some cool loot. What kind of NPC would take the risk and do all the things that it would take to uh, uh, to spend the time and the resources, to make such an item that benefits literally nobody ever. It's just pure malice, made material in form. Yeah, it's dark, but you glow. I know.
I mean, to be
Yeah.
honest, though, the idea of cursed weapons being made by demons and left places where humans might find them just as a way of tormenting humans does kind of work in some settings, at
Fits.
least.
Yeah,
Well,
I suppose, Flady. I didn't really think about it like that because the answer is obvious. But I was thinking, of wizards, not monsters to begin with. But
Well, that sorry.
go for it.
Well, what I'm going to say is that falls under the category of stuff that it, in this case, did in a video game, but it definitely falls under that category where you have the ability and so much supplies to make a magical, in this case, like I did on Skyrim, so many magical items that I started playing with different uh, combinations to the point that I made many weapons that would just drain your health the moment you try using them because they'll light you on fire or they'll just straight sap your health or they'll electrocute you out of sheer boredom. And if you get a wizard who's old enough and rich enough and he's got enough supplies to just pump out magic items, he's going to make a few cursed ones just for the freaking hell of it because
Uh,
he's bored.
that is actually an interesting point. One of the uh, swords and sorcery themed novels I read years ago, what they explained as the process for making magic swords is that either you can go with something that's safe and known with a combination of magical elements that you trust and have experience with, or you can experiment and maybe possibly produce something that will kill the person who wields it because the magic forces aren't aligned in a way that is productive. And then you now have a magic sword that you need to either destroy or, throw in a bin to leave to rot.
Put in a box and drop it to the bottom of the ocean. Super. Hey, Bruce, I'm surprised you didn't, take a bite out of this particular episode. Um, Maybe next time.
Maybe he just got here too late.
Yeah,
Possibly.
he does, work his ass to the bone. So I hope you're enjoying the show, man.
So, as far as curses to teach valuable lessons or impart some kind of moral or ongoing story, I do use this on rare occasions. I don't, just throw curses around in my game world for no reason. Every curse has a purpose, has a reason to it. And I don't like having to put them in, and I say having to put them in because my players are doing really really dumb things. Then sometimes I will put a curse in place to get them to move or act in a particular way, to inspire them to go do something. Generally, though, I don't have to, thankfully. Most of my players understand the onerousness is on them to move the plot and move the story. It's their game, their story, and what they do and actions they take determine the flow and rate at which we proceed through a game. Very rarely do I have to put a curse in play that forces them to choose a direction of some kind. What direction they choose, I really don't care typically. It's their choice, but they must choose to do something. I don't like acting upon my players. I like my players acting upon the knowledge they have and the game world ahead of them. Whatever they choose, that's what they choose. But as far as teaching lessons or moral, stories, it was used on me. Like I said, in one of the very first games I ever played, and this is quarter of a century ago. This is 25 years ago for me, and it taught me the value of not being a straight up murder hobo. Um, and that's the way I was playing the game for a number of years. Even after that point, I still wanted to play murder hobo like characters or characters that were very very effective at what they did. But that was the character, like I said before, who was wounded on the face. I had to learn to role play and truly learn to role play because of that. Which for me, at that time it was something I hadn't done. I didn't understand how to do that. So and the game master I had was willing and was patient and willing to work with me to teach me how to be more than just numbers on a page and how to be more than just dice rolls on a table. Um, so I think the curse was more life, like real life lesson than it was game lesson. It taught me how to play.
I like it. For me, there's an old saying, and sorry, my camera is glitching out right now. I don't know why. Probably because I went downstairs. But the old saying goes, "Be careful what you wish for. You just might get it." And so often players are seemingly out for themselves. So I like to sometimes reward them with a little bit more than they asked for. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
You know, maybe you know taking up that quest, for someone other than yourself might just be, you know, more profitable, for your soul and for your pocketbook, as opposed to, going after the dragon that hasn't bothered anybody in a century, and now you're going to wake him up.
That's actually one of those really, really amusing plot elements that I've seen someone pull out is the whole. It's like, oh yeah, there's this horrible, vicious dragon that's been terrorizing this region, and then when you get there, you realize that yes, actually, the dragon has been terrorizing a region. However, there's this other region who's been paying the dragon to terrorize their enemies. Hmm. Now what are you going to do? Because the dragon is functionally acting as their protector. Well.
Was that your response to the the question, or what I was saying?
It's just something I found I thought of.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'll come back to you. Give crafting a chance to touch on this one.
Oh, you mean well the question here? I can go with that for now. Think about what you want to do with the curse before you decide what the form the curse should take, because like what impact do you want it to have on the campaign? I mean, if it's a cursed item where all you do is go back to town and have the local priest uncurse you, I mean, you need to think about what you want the players to do with the item and why the players would even bother with the item in the first place before you put it into the game. And if it's something that it's like a cursed building that horribly mangles whoever goes into the building, again, think about why you want the players to go there and what you want the players to do there. And then decide if you want to go ahead with that idea or come up with something else.
Okay. How about you, crafting? Do you ever use a curse as a method to teach a valuable lesson?
You already asked me that.
You know what?
That
You're
was
right.
my
Sorry,
that was the
guys.
dragon cave.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought
Well, you know what?
he skipped ahead
Yeah.
to the next question
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
went back.
Sorry. It happens. Well, crafting, I'm going to give you a chance to tackle this one first then. Why would you recommend to our fellow game masters placing a curse in your ongoing campaign?
For the fun of it. Well, seriously, uh, that is part of it. But on the more serious side of it, it is a great way if you have murder hobos like Jade said. Almost said Jace. Um,
I know it,
it's
Jace.
great. Everyone calls him Jace the asshole.
No, she is. I call her a she, and she is actually not a bad person. Anyway,
Sorry, I only know
continue.
one Jace. Sorry. Sorry. Uh, it's a great way to teach gamers a direct lesson in that aspect. It's a great way to impart moral lessons, like I was talking about. Too much greed is bad, but a little, as you say, I'll use your word, ambition is good. There's also the cursed items can be used to both in make a player more powerful as well as dull down certain aspects. Like if you if you want this sword that can cleave an ogre in half, you're going to have to take a reduction in this particular stat. So you won't be as epic as you were, but you can at least cut something in half with this with no problem, type thing. I haven't done too much of that, so I don't have any good examples. But a cursed item can be used for just about anything, provided that your players are able to get your reference, because some don't, and that you actually do it in a manner that makes sense to the players as well. Because they can't get your reference if you can't communicate it very well to begin with. I think I just used more words than was necessary for that.
Also, I just realized rereading the question that I read it wrong when I was attempting to answer it earlier. I read it as
Oh, the
how.
previous question?
No, the current one. I read it as how,
Oh, okay.
and that's what I was relating a few minutes ago. Oops. Why? Well, why? Why is a very different question than how.
Hmm.
If it's plot
Well, go for it.
important, and you need the plot to do certain things, then go for it. Because it's like the whole thing I mentioned with the whole like having cursed locations, where you know maybe the entire adventure is to break the curse. You, that is something critical to the plot, so you need to have the curse there as part of the plot, or just like a random haha oops kind of thing in the adventure, where you pick up a ring and the ring gives you a -2 to your wisdom stat, because why wouldn't it? That's just it, those two things have a very very different purpose in the story, but your reason for including them is equally different. And if the ring of bad juju might be a funny thing, and honestly, as a GM, you wouldn't necessarily actually have to do the whole thing of like, oh, it's cursed and you can't remove it. You could just, you know, not tell the player until they do an int roll that their int is at -5, as long as they wear the ring. And then like, oh, yeah, you can just take the ring off if you want to, but the player doesn't realize this until they've had it on for a while. That's just something I would throw in as a gag for the fun of it, because it doesn't really mess up the adventure, probably, but
As far as why I would recommend game masters placing a curse in their campaign, their ongoing campaign, curses have this unique ability to drive plot. Um, and it puts the onerousness back onto the players. If you present the players with some kind of curse that affects them or affects somebody or something they care about, they are going to move mountains to try to remove or end the curse in some way. And they are going to move that plot for you with a curse on the table. And you, the game master, all you have to do is come up with what the encounters are that they, whatever they come across. That's all you have to do at that point, because they themselves are moving the camera for you. They are the director of the screen. They are the driving force behind the plot. because they want to remove the curse, or find a way to remove it if it can be removed. And some curses can't be removed by any other means than death in some cases. For the Lu Guru, it's a bloodline curse on one particular family. And every person in their bloodline, the eldest person of the bloodline, has the curse. When they die, it passes to the next of kin in the bloodline. The only way to end that curse is to kill the last person of the bloodline. And if the bloodline itself has been waning anyway, then it eventually peters out. But for players to want to, I don't know, let's think some of our Western European stories. Sleeping Beauty, for example. Yeah, and not the Disney one, the Western European grim fairy tale one. Um, you know, she was cursed, poisoned, however you want to say it, to sleep, the sleep of the dead, until the curse was broken or lifted. And the if one of your players has a beloved, a loved one in the game world, you can hit them with that curse, hit the loved one with that curse, and that player, if they are truly into the story, truly into their character, and truly into what's going on in the world, they are going to figure out how to move entire countries and continents to see the curse undone. And they will drive that plot to its conclusion for you. So that is why I recommend putting in some of those curses, into your games.
Nice. As you guys may have guessed, my answer to this question was the previous question. I use it as a teaching lesson. I use it as an opportunity to fix something that's going on with one or more of the players, and sort of redirect them to you know not what I want them to do, but to remember that they're supposed to be the big damn heroes. Unless it's a evil campaign, in which case you know the lessons may be entirely different. But I just want them to you know to be the heroes, to do the right thing for the right reason, as opposed to just doing it for you know fame and fortune and glory and all those things that really aren't what being a hero is truly about. Now, we actually are going to make it to the super secret squirrel question, which I wasn't sure that we'd make it, but this, I'm glad we did, because this is uh, our job as the GM. We have to provide an out, unless we are just trying to run our game into the ground and have it come to a screeching halt where the players rage quit or give up the hobby or some other such nonsense. So I am going to start with crafting with this one. Do you hinder or modify the removal of curses in your campaign, and if so, why?
Unless a rune specifically says otherwise, you can't remove the curse unless you give up the weapon. And I haven't played with too many curses that require remove curse. I would probably, since if I'm going to give a curse to a player, admittedly, it's going to be for a good reason. So I'm going to modify remove curse. It's definitely going to be along the line of a jade curse. Oh, remove curse isn't good enough. You're going to have to go to this mountain that's in this desert that you have to cross this sea to get to.
Nice. That is more or less my outlook on that, but with a couple of additions. But we'll get to that when it's my turn. Uh, Mar, how about you?
The method of removal of a curse should be determined by the nature of the curse. I mean, like
Absolutely.
I did that example of a ring that gives you -5 wisdom. I mean, that one is just one of those things that's just so trivial that removing the curse is practically a formality. But having a castle that's cursed because of the ancient lich who used to live there, and the lich isn't living there anymore, but the castle is still the Lich's castle, and you need to dispel his essence from the castle to lift the curse on the lands. Well, that's the entire focus of a quest. You can't just cast remove curse on the castle.
Yeah, that does seem a little too easy, doesn't it, guys?
Yeah.
You know,
as
there are other detrimental things that can also be removed with just a hocus pocus from your local cleric that I'm not a big fan of. I like, you know, things to be a little bit more complicated than that. Otherwise, it's over too quickly.
Well, there is actually an idea in some games having, shall we say, tiers of curse removal abilities, like lesser remove curse, regular remove curse, and then greater remove curse, or so on. And some curses are purgeable with lesser, and some need the greater one, and so on. Which that's an idea that works too. Because it's like it's hard to find someone who can do the greater remove curse, because that's not an ability that novice clerics would have.
so hindering or modifying the removal of curses in games. Yeah, you know, just because a cleric has the ability to cast curse, doesn't mean it's the end all be all thing. Generally, it's just a mechanical thing. But the true curses, and and that I'm calling them true curses, not what the cleric can do, but what gods and dark fae and even jinn or other creatures can do. The truly dark curses are ones that should be innate, or I'm sorry, it should be not innate, but should be intrinsic and unique things. Um, you know that can't be removed by any other means than going and fulfilling what the curse's demands are. Sure, a god with a miracle could probably remove a wish. The question you should be asking is, would they? Would they actually be willing to remove the curse, or is it something that the god wants to see the characters do to succeed at, to prove their mettle, to prove their worth in the world? um so having these onerous these huge tasks to go and complete to remove a curse, like what was it, Hercules had the 12 labors, and I mean, who else? I'm trying to think of other really great verses. I'm just drawing a blank. It's been a long day for me. Um, but
A long
these
night.
curses, yeah, long night and day. But yes, if you have the more interesting way that the curse is removed, um, and the more dire that the curse is, upon the characters that are involved with it, the more the players will go above and beyond to remove it. Now, yes, you will have some go that that will get exceptionally butthurt very quickly, going, "I can't believe you cursed me. I'm leaving the game." All right, there's the door. Please don't return. And that's what I say to that. If your players get easily butthurt, curses aren't for you. Um, but if your players don't get butthurt about taking on a few negatives here and there because of story reasons, use it, and have them go through the 12 labors of Hercules even to alleviate a curse if necessary. Um, I mean, and don't just steal it from them in the end either. Like, make it so that it is achievable, but don't, when they do achieve it, don't just go and steal their thunder from it. make it a moment, make it something that gives them goosebumps as you explain how the curse lifts ever so slightly. I had a game this past Friday, and it wasn't anything to do with a curse, but the way I had set up the moment and how it came to be, there were people there who, when the words were said aloud, they had goosebumps because it was that powerful of a moment. So when your players succeed at a step of a curse, it should be that momentous of a thing. It should have some kind of weight to it, and that weight should lift off the players ever so slightly, and it should empower them to want to continue forward.
Listening to that reminded me of a concept that doesn't get used as much as it probably should in TTRPGs, but is a rather fun idea as a variant for curses. That's the idea that you need to do a special method uh, to remove curses that isn't simply casting remove curse, or the curse will be relocated instead of being dispelled completely. And it basically is like it's like a person is cursed. You cast remove curse. The curse jumps to a different person, and so the idea here
That's sneaky.
is that you would need to do a ritual where the cursed person or item is in a location where the curse can't jump to something else in order to remove the curse properly. Or just force it to jump into something you don't want, and then, okay, whatever, we're done here.
Faraday cage the person from curses.
Hmm.
I like it.
Unless the curse goes back to the remover of the curse, there's always going to be that option. And I do like the idea of having the punishment fit the crime, and the atonement fit the punishment.
Mm-hmm.
It shouldn't be just a simple game mechanic. Uh, Otherwise, it loses all of its impact and will soon be forgotten. Like so many times the party has been healed of a grievous wound. Oh, cure light wounds. We're good. Let's move on.
Yeah.
No, if you get a grievous injury, it should be memorable. You should, any of us who've been scarred or broken a bone or something like that, it's left a mark on us.
I mean, I
And
have a
with
permanent scar on my left arm that I got a few weeks ago when a piece of wood being used as a support beam under a building fell on my arm. it's
right,
Yeah.
it wasn't even a real injury, but it left a permanent scar anyways.
right the
Lasting injuries.
it should leave a mark, whether it's physical or mental. There should be something. And I too am a fan of the rituals and the exorcisms and things like that. They make for a great memorable scene, when you remove the offending entity or magic. You should see it. You should be able to smell the effect of it, being removed and dissipated or sent to where it belongs, wherever that may be. The idea is to teach a lesson. But if the lesson is just a slap on the wrist, uh you know that's not going to be uh very lasting. You're not going to remember it, and you're not going to learn from it, both the players and the referee. Because sometimes the player may, or excuse me, the GM may also have maybe done something they shouldn't have done, and maybe it'll give everybody a moment to reflect on going forward. And hopefully, like I said, it will leave a lasting memory, and everybody will learn something for it. That's what experience points are all about. Yes, it's a game mechanic, but it's meant to reflect that you've learned something, even from your failures and mistakes, and the tragedies and triumphs along the way. There should be some balance, and hopefully, you guys out there in TV land will will take this to heart and use these ideas in your next campaign somewhere down the road. Maybe tomorrow, maybe never.
Yeah.
But
Well, one thing quick is that that thing you were saying about teaching lessons. One of the most memorable things from a Hyperborea game that I did was someone who was basically, like doing Monty Hall, like, oh hey, that's a cabinet. It looks like it has loot in it, and just like grabbing everything and shoving it into his pockets. Some things in Hyperborea you should not grab and shove into your pockets. One occasion that happened, one of the objects that a player grabbed like this and tried to shove into his pocket was an exploding skull. Yeah, that taught him a lesson.
All right. Well, Shadow, do you feel satisfied on this topic?
absolutely, I'm really happy that we made it through all 9 questions. I wish my camera was working. Sorry about that, folks. One more picture for Hungar to to save for his collection of odd, embarrassing moments of the Shadow. Yeah, thanks, guys. Appreciate that. Yeah, that was me not dissatisfied with anything other than my camera, not you folks at home, which we are really, really grateful and thankful that you guys showed up and added to the conversation. Jade's going to be starting a new thing where all these questions will be in the show description, so anybody who comes in at a later moment can come in and continue the conversation or add to it in the comment section, because videos like this really should be evergreen, and long after we're gone, when players are wondering how folks used to play Dungeons and Dragons or other role-playing games, they can come back and still gain something from this, as opposed to our other live streams where we just goof off for a couple hours and more or less get nothing done.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So, does anybody
So,
else
take
have
us outta
anything
here.
to? Okay, well, take us out of here then. If
Well, unless
you
the other guys got something
enjoyed,
to say.
yeah, if you guys have something to add it.
No, I'm
Oops.
good.
Forever hold your
Okay.
peace.
All right then.
We aimed at
If
cheese.
you
Nice. Nice. I've never heard that one before. That's great. I'm stealing
If
it.
you enjoyed tonight's content, please consider hitting that like button. If you really enjoy our content, please consider hitting the subscribe button to this channel and the other channels linked in the video description. And with that, we bid you all a very fond evening. We'll see you next week with a new topic and, hopefully, some more thought-provoking conversation. Have a great night, everyone.